The sky over Milford was the kind of gray that warned of trouble. Low clouds rolled in like an advancing army, blotting out the last hint of sun. Daniel Brooks didn't mind. Storms had always been a strange sort of comfort to him, loud enough to drown out the thoughts that never seemed to leave him alone. He leaned on the old wooden railing of the town's bridge, watching the slow swirl of the river below. The boards beneath his boots groaned softly with each shift of his weight. His jacket was zipped to his chin, but a stubborn autumn wind cut through it just the same. It had been another long day at the auto shop. Grease under his nails, sore muscles, and that same empty apartment waiting for him at the end of it. At 36, Daniel's life had narrowed into something simple but lonely: work, eat, sleep, repeat. Friends had drifted away, romance had fizzled out years ago, and family, well, family wasn't much of a word he used anymore. He was about to turn toward home when the rain came, sudden, heavy, and cold enough to sting. It was as though the clouds had been holding their breath all day, waiting for the perfect moment to exhale. Daniel pulled his hood up, tucking his chin against the downpour. He should have moved on, but something, a sound, rooted him to the spot. It was faint at first, almost lost beneath the hiss of rain on water. Then it came again, a high, sharp cry. He froze, scanning the bridge and its surroundings. The sound wasn't coming from the river. No, it was coming from the far end of the street, near where the bridge met the curb. Through the haze of rain, he spotted a small figure standing in the gutter, water rushing around tiny feet. A child. Alone. Daniel's pulse kicked up. Without thinking, he strode across the bridge, the wind shoving against him. His boots splashed through puddles, cold water soaking his socks. As he drew closer, he could make out the details: a little girl, maybe 5 years old, her thin pink dress plastered to her frame. Dark hair clung to her face in wet strands. She clutched a sodden teddy bear, its head lolling to one side. She was crying, real, helpless sobs that shook her small body. Kneeling down in the rushing water, Daniel spoke softly over the rain. "Hey. You okay?" The girl's eyes lifted to his. They were wide and dark, but not empty, more like they were holding back an ocean. She shook her head. "I can't find my mommy." The words were barely more than a whisper, but they hit him like a punch to the chest. "It's all right," he said, offering his hand. "You're safe now." Her small, icy fingers curled around his. Without another word, he lifted her into his arms. She was so light it startled him, like carrying a bundle of twigs wrapped in a soaked blanket. Her head dropped onto his shoulder, trembling against the wet fabric of his jacket. He spotted the neon glow of Miller's diner across the street and hurried toward it, shielding her as best he could from the downpour. The bell over the door jingled as they stepped inside, the blast of warm air carrying the smell of coffee, bacon, and baked bread. Heads turned. The waitress, a kindly woman in her 50s, hurried over with a towel. "Oh, Lord. What happened?" "Found her out in the rain." "Alone," Daniel said, gently setting the girl into a booth. The waitress's gaze softened. "I'll get her some hot chocolate." Daniel peeled off his soaked jacket and draped it over the child's shoulders. She clutched the teddy bear in one arm and the edge of the jacket in the other, watching him with cautious eyes. "My name's Daniel," he said, sliding into the booth opposite her. "What's yours?" "Sophie," she murmured, almost as if saying it too loudly might make her disappear. A steaming mug appeared in front of her. She wrapped her tiny hands around it, taking slow sips. Through careful questions, Daniel pieced together what she could tell him. She and her mother had been walking in the park when her mother went away for a minute and didn't come back. Sophie didn't know her address. She only knew they had come to Milford for something important. Daniel's gut tightened. He knew the ache of being left behind. He'd been 8 when his own father walked out for good, leaving Daniel and his mother scraping by on waitress tips and sheer stubbornness. That empty doorway had haunted him for decades. Pulling out his phone, he called the police. While they sent an officer, he stayed with Sophie, keeping her talking, keeping her warm. When the officer arrived, a tall man with a calm voice, Sophie's grip on Daniel's hand tightened. The officer asked Daniel to accompany them to the station until social services could take over. He didn't hesitate. At the station, Sophie refused to leave his side. Even when the officers brought over a box of toys, she stayed in the chair beside him, her head resting against his arm until she drifted into exhausted sleep. The next morning, the caseworker told him no relatives had been found. Sophie's mother's whereabouts were unknown. She would be placed into foster care. Daniel's chest ached at the thought. The system wasn't cruel by design, but it was still a hard place for a child so young and so lost. Without planning to, he heard himself say, "Can I apply to be her temporary guardian until you find her mom?" The caseworker hesitated. Daniel was single, lived modestly, worked long hours. But when Sophie's eyes lit up at the idea, they agreed to try, on a trial basis. The weeks that followed transformed Daniel's life. His apartment, once quiet and bare, filled with small shoes by the door, crayons scattered on the table, and the sound of laughter echoing down the hallway. He learned how to braid hair, poorly, how to make pancakes in the shape of teddy bears, and that bedtime stories could be just as comforting for adults as for children. Sophie began to open up, telling him about her favorite cartoons, the songs her mom used to sing, and how she wanted to be a helper when she grew up. But sometimes, in the middle of playtime, she'd stop and stare out the window, clutching her bear. Daniel knew she was thinking about her mother. 6 weeks later, everything changed. It was another rainy afternoon when a sleek black sedan pulled up outside the auto shop. Out stepped a woman in a dark coat, her movements deliberate, her expression tense. She introduced herself as Claire Morgan. Her voice shook as she said, "I'm Sophie's mother." Daniel's heart lurched. He'd imagined this moment, but in his mind it had always been different. Softer. He asked her where she'd been. The truth hit harder than he expected. Claire wasn't a neglectful parent. She had been working undercover with federal investigators to dismantle a dangerous criminal ring. She'd been forced into hiding when threats were made against her and Sophie. On the day Sophie was found in the rain, Claire had been moments from meeting her but was spotted by dangerous people. She had no choice but to draw them away, sacrificing her own safety to protect her daughter. Her voice broke as she whispered, "I thought I'd lost her forever." The anger Daniel had been holding on to drained away. All his life, he'd believed that when a parent left, it meant they didn't care. But here was proof that love sometimes meant walking away to keep someone safe. The reunion was pure joy. Sophie flew into her mother's arms, tears mingling with rain as they clung to each other. Daniel stood back, watching the scene with a bittersweet ache. Before leaving, Claire turned to him. "You didn't just keep her safe. You gave her back her laughter. I can never thank you enough." He watched them drive away, the rain softening into mist. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something shift inside. He had answered a cry for help, and in doing so, had been healed a little himself. Because sometimes, kindness isn't about grand gestures, it's about stopping in the rain when someone cries out, and deciding you won't walk away. If this story touched your heart, remember, one act of kindness can change someone's life forever. You never know when you might be the answer to someone's silent plea. If you believe in the power of compassion, please like this video, subscribe to Pure Kindness Stories, and share it with someone who needs hope today.